Previously, in 2017, when switching from XSplit to Elgato, I accidentally saw a guide on how to make a nice background for a video, and had the audacity to try and apply that to an Elgato versus XSplit video. I made a comparison video to confirm to myself that owning the Elgato card wasn't a horrific waste of cash. Elgato looked marginally better than my best case settings with XSplit. So, a victory. In 2020, due to some upsetting audio issues with my Elgato software that are thankfully fixed, and with me having to practice with OBS and the interface looking a lot prettier than it did in 2017, I asked the question, is an Elgato HD Pro still better than a software solution? This is very much a thing that I almost uploaded just for personal use. But on reflection, and with me having already uploaded a video similar to this before, I decided this might be of some use to someone somewhere. 3 years having passed since my last little tech off, let us commence. I should say in advance, my main criteria will be the overall quality once the video is uploaded. Since I already own both of the products, the cost won't be a factor. I'm rather hoping that the Elgato card will have justified itself with some better quality. But unless the difference is night and day, it will be entirely down to your own needs and usage scenario as to whether or not the variances in quality will justify the cost in your scenarios. So first off, a 4-way comparison with OBS, running Total War with pretty much everything on Ultra, and well above my graphics card's pay grade, sadly. This is just to see the best and worst case scenarios with OBS, so I can try and show OBS in its best light. I think it's fairly clear as to what is better out of these 4 options. For me, both of the game capture modes are much smoother, full screen being the ideal, but unfortunately not very realistic for a lot of the occasions in which I'd be playing a game. If you're streaming or have any allusions to streaming, you're probably going to want to be able to play the game in borderless mode. But yeah, I definitely think that it's the case of performance going from top left, bottom right to top right. You can see, interestingly, that regardless of the mode, it doesn't really seem to have more or less of an impact with OBS. So, hooray, and much fanfare for OBS Game Capture with game full screen. That said, I had trouble enforcing a game capture mode whilst actually trying to record the split screen footage at more reasonable settings, with OBS just refusing to display the game. This was my funnest attempt, with OBS actually seeming to act a bit like it was going to work, but then not. Unable to record OBS in its most ideal settings, I settled for being able to record OBS in the most practical settings, i.e. the ones that would work. So this is unfortunately display capture. As you can see from the footage, the OBS is choppier, and even when I have managed to get it playing at its full speed via the game capture mode, it hasn't looked as smooth as the Elgato. I'd say the colours are pretty much comparable, but definitely Elgato wins out on accuracy in terms of definition of detail and general smoothness. It isn't really fair to judge the colours particularly because I haven't done masses in terms of affecting the colours. It's a bit beyond my level of understanding. But what you can see is that the Elgato maintains a much more consistent frame rate in creating presentable gameplay footage. You can also see that OBS has much more of a performance impact and will eat away at your system's performance. This might be less of an issue if you have a newer computer than I do, but I included my system specs earlier for context. This isn't supposed to be a truly objective review of whether or not OBS can be as good as Elgato. This is purely reflective of my use case and what's going to be better for me, which I think is fairly clearly the Elgato, which would make my future recording device pretty clear were it not for the fact I have recently picked up the 4K Pro and this adorable little guy. I am curious to see how the 4K capture card fares against a £20 HDMI video capture card, especially once it's put up onto YouTube. It's going to be really disappointing if the HDMI capture card that proclaims that it is fighting for the dream, which I find a glorious, glorious tagline. I'm slightly worried this isn't a capture card and actually it's a superhero, but I'll be really upset if its performance is in any way comparable to either of the Elgato cards. But that's not for now, that's a future tech off if I end up making it public. So yeah, thanks for watching and, check some of my other content or something.